Hey YouTube, it's Them That God's bringing you another video. This time I want to go over something a little bit different. It's not going to be just a regular action figure review or a video of a custom I've done. I wanted to go over the differences between a real set of NECA Ninja Turtles and the so-called bootlegs that have been showing up from China over the last couple years. If you look on the right here, this is a real set. The set on the left right here is a bootleg set. I do own a few different sets of these. I actually have 4, counting the black and white set. I've studied them quite extensively. I've done some research on the internet, and also looked at the figures myself to come up with the main differences that I found, so you can tell if the set that you have is a real set or a bootleg set. I would encourage you to watch this video just so you can tell, especially if you don't own them yet, if you're looking on eBay. These are things to look for when you're looking at listings. And also, don't be afraid to email sellers and say, hey, how did you get these figures? Did you get them in this package or this package? Or who did you buy them from? They'll probably be pretty honest with you. And to tell you the truth, the bootleg set's still pretty great, and I would buy it. Obviously, I have bought it, and I don't regret it at all. Before I get into that, though, I do want to go over a few things that I've noticed that a lot of people have missed in their reviews of these figures, and I don't know why, but I kind of take offense to it because I love these figures so much and I want to see justice done to them. But a lot of reviewers just don't really study the figures before they do the review, and they'll flat out tell you lies like, there's no waist articulation. Well, actually there is. I don't know why I get offended by it. I just do. They're misinforming people. I know it's a toy. I know it's dumb to get offended about it. But I just want you guys to be well informed about these figures. So the first thing that gets missed that I'll show you is that there's a waist swivel, like I just said. If you look at Leonardo here, check it out. Waist swivel. The other thing is the tails, and I have seen some people point this out, but a lot of people don't. The tails are articulated. If you can tell, I'm moving the tail. And then the last thing, as far as articulation goes, is that there is an ab crunch. You can see it here. It's kind of arched in the front and then it's straight in the back, and it moves pretty easily. See the ab crunch there? It exists. There's really good articulation on these figures. A lot of the reviews say, oh, I don't know why they put such good articulation into the arms and legs when they didn't do anything in the body. But there's articulation there. It's not really missing anything that standard figures like Marvel Legends or DC Universe Classics would have. Articulation's all there. The other thing I want to point out, which is the same on the bootleg and the real versions, which kind of leads me to believe that whoever made these so-called bootlegs, I mean, obviously they have access to the real molds, the real color choices, the real everything, because this stuff's really close. I've kind of come to the conclusion that I think it's just a failed run of figures that NECA didn't want released, that someone just found in a warehouse somewhere and started distributing, because there are some quality control issues, obviously, but the colors are the same, a lot of the materials are the same. It's odd to me to think that these are bootlegs. But I want to show you, a lot of people look like they're going to break their figures when they do figure reviews. When they're putting the weapons in the hands, they try to like smush the fingers and they look like they're going to snap off and stuff. But if you look here on Leonardo, I want to show you guys on the sword here, the little gold part on the hilt, it pops right out. If you see that, there's 2 separate pieces. And then you can just slide it right out. You don't have to mash the fingers or, almost break stuff to get it in. And then it just pops right back in. So I don't know why people are trying to break the fingers. Just observe a little bit and pull that out. I'm sorry if I feel like a jerk. I'm not trying to. It's just, these are great figures. I don't want to see anyone break them. And they're going to break them by doing that. The other thing is Donatello. I actually saw one reviewer call this a point of articulation, which I think is ridiculous. I don't know why a straight bow staff would need a point of articulation. You can see I'm kind of rotating it here. But right here, it just pops apart. And all you have to do with that is just slide it in through the fingers on each side and then pop them back together. And you didn't have to break any of the fingers to put the bow staff in his hands. I don't know why, but Michelangelo and Raphael don't have that. Raphael, it is kind of weird putting the size in between his fingers. Like this, it is kind of scary. Sometimes you do feel like the fingers are going to break. There's no way around that. But for Leonardo and Donatello, they did give you that safe shortcut. Now, on to the differences between the two, that I've got that out of the way. The first thing I want to point out that's the most obvious difference that you see on eBay, every Chinese seller from eBay is selling these figures in this packaging. It's a plastic tube. I actually did see these on the shelves once here in America. Here in Dayton there was a record store called Gem City Records that doesn't exist anymore, but I did see them once there in the tube packaging. So I would assume that there are real NECA, official releases that come in the tube packaging. They just were pretty scarce. So I don't want to say that all of them that are in the tube are bootleg, but probably chances are 99 times out of 100 you've got a bootleg if they came in that tube packaging. The only way to know that you're super incredibly safe in that you have a real set is if you get them in these clamshell packages. This is the clamshell for April O'Neil, but they do look the same. I don't have my original ones. I wish I would have kept them. If you have the clamshell packaging, they come with extra accessories and stuff. You probably already know that. You've got real ones if you have the clamshell package. No doubt about it. The other thing is if you get it in this package, there's no way this is going to fit in the shot, but here is the box set packaging. There's a few different versions of this. As far as I know, every set that comes in the box set is an official release. I don't think I've seen any sellers from China selling the box set. Maybe once or twice, but I would kind of assume that those are probably the real ones, even though they are from China. The other thing is that there are some figures from China of the black and white set that say they come in package, but they never show the packaging on the eBay listing, and I would like to find out what kind of packaging they come in. If you've ordered a black and white set, please leave a comment down there on what kind of packaging they came in. I'm interested to know. Beyond packaging, the main thing I can tell you guys to look for, which is hard, you're not going to be able to see it in pictures, but if you have them in hand, you're going to be able to tell, is, let me show you here with these two figures of Leonardo. The rubber parts on the front of the shell and the bandanas are a lot harder on the bootleg versions than they are on the real versions. If you see here, you can move it, but it kind of feels like it might break if you move it like this a lot, the same way like a wire might break if you bend it a bunch in the same position. If you look here, this moves without any issue, and it doesn't feel like it's going to break at all. It's just nice and rubbery. Another thing to point out is that on the official release, the bandana on Leonardo points down, and on the bootleg release, it points to Leonardo's right, which is kind of weird. The rest of the bandanas on all the rest of the turtles are the same. If you look at the front of the shell here, you can see I can barely move this, and that the ab crunch articulation and the waist swivel, you can't move it on these very well because this is so hard, and that's probably why a lot of people miss it in their reviews. But you can barely move that, and if you look on the real one, you can move it without any issues. I can pull it all the way down from his chest. So the ab crunch is easily accessible, so on and so forth. The other thing I'd like to point out, excuse me, is in the paint applications. Well, first, it seems like on the bootleg version that the red is painted on the bandana, whereas this is molded in red, and this kind of gives it more of a glowy, defined red look, where this one's kind of more gummy and dirty looking. But also, as far as paint applications go, you can see nice smooth applications on the front of the shell on the official release. These have these solid lines. Like this dark yellow is obviously supposed to be around the edge, but it's off. You could tell like the paint is just off kilter. It doesn't fit in the right spot. So that's one thing to look for, is the paint applications on the shell. Another good example of this is on my bootleg Donatello. The black along here, let me put on my macro lens just to make sure you guys see it. If you look at the black here, it's super messy and it's really off. It just doesn't look good. Another thing is that on the bootlegs, if you can see, I don't know if you can see here, but it looks like the paint application is thin and kind of gross, whereas these are more thick. You can't really see through them at all, but these kind of have a dirty black look because they're just not that thick. Also, the bow staff is a little more dirty looking on the bootleg than on the real version. You can see the black details are a lot more defined on this one than they are on this one, but not too far off. Another thing I'd like to point out, well, let me use Donatello here. I don't know if you can tell on the feet, but the bootleg feet tend to be a little bit more blue looking. I don't think you can really tell, whereas the real one's more green. But you can also see on the shell, and this is definitely coming through, the bootlegs are more blue and the real ones are more green, and you can tell that. Excuse me. But just, you know, there's just a lot of paint slop on the fake ones. If you see here, this looks gross. It's not as defined on this side, and the real ones have all defined paint there. Also on my Raphael, like his bandana here is just missing paint apps. If you look on the real version, you can see black details in between his eyes, and they're just missing from this one. They're just not there. I think that's most of the differences. The other thing I would like to point out is that on the real ones, the feet tend to be very flat, and I don't know what happened when they molded it on the bootlegs, but you can tell this foot is a lot more arched than this foot is. And when you sit it against a surface, you can definitely tell a lot better. So that's one thing to look for, is the arched feet. That's the end of the differences for the most part. The other thing I would like to point out about the bootlegs is that they just seem to be assembled poorly. If you look in the joints here, you can see a lot of the joints are blown out where they put the pegs in, and they just look awful. Like there, like that plastic is just blowing out the sides where that peg wasn't put in properly, and that bugs me. But you know, it's not that hard to fix, especially if you know what you're doing customizing. Also, when I got my Raphael, I had to pop these joints on the legs because they were off on both sides. So I had to heat that plastic up and kind of squeeze it back on there. Oh, and one more thing I don't want to forget. I'm sorry, I didn't script this review. But on the ankle joints, there is an ankle pivot. But on the bootlegs, the feet tend to... Let me see if I can show you. It's not really happening now. They're a lot more secure on the real ones. There we go. They tend to pop off on the bootleg ones, and so far I've never had the real versions pop off like that. And I kind of like this too, because when you're posing them, you can kind of half them on there and get like a super ankle pivot out of it. So I kind of like that they pop off. And you can just pop them right back in. I've just never had that happen on the real versions. So that's it for my review, I guess, of the differences I've noticed between the real and bootleg versions of the Ninja Turtles. I hope the review was informative. I know it was a little jumbled because I didn't script it, but I just hope it makes you, or helps you make a better decision when you're buying them to see if you have the real versions or not. Obviously, the only surefire way to know that you have the real version is to get them in the clamshell packaging, but you're going to be paying up to like 4 times more per figure. These usually sell mint on card for like almost $400, whereas you can get the bootlegs for under $100 shipped, which really is a great price. You think less than $25 per figure, it's well worth it. So if you're going back and forth, sitting on the fence about whether or not you want to get one of the sets from eBay, I would say just go ahead and do it. They're great figures. You know, you can see, looking at it right here, you can't even tell the difference just looking at this, probably, most likely. So I would say go ahead and get it. You know, they're going to look great sitting on a shelf. As long as you're not banging them together or slamming them against the wall and throwing them on the floor, they're not going to break. They're going to stay intact like they're supposed to. And like I said, I don't know if they're actually bootlegs or if they're a failed run that NECA didn't want released, but they work and they're worth the money. Especially if you can customize, then you can fix them up pretty well. I hope you found the review informative. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later.